Hello and welcome to Error-Driven Coding. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through Solidity functions and their visibility. So, you should be familiar with functions, and if we look at the documentation here, you can see that functions have four types of visibility. They can be either external, public, internal, or private. And if we look at the ordering, the most open is public, as you can probably guess. After this, it goes external, internal, and then the most closed type of function is a private one, where the function and the state variables are only visible for the contracts they are defined in. Now, what does all this mean? Well, public and external are actually very similar. And in a previous video, I looked in detail about the difference, where it's mainly due to the cost of gas. Just a quick recap. Public functions use more gas than external functions. Now, let's go ahead and create a public function first to see how this works. Let's jump into Remix, which is the online Solidity compiler. And I'll go ahead and let's create a new file here. Let's call this public function. Let's start off with our pragma definition, and we'll create our first contract here like so. And again, we'll go and look at the errors here, where you can see it's expecting a close bracket. So let's go enter to get rid of this error. Now, the first thing we'll do is let's go and create a state variable or a global variable. Let's go, it's a type string message, and I'll make it something like welcome. And you'll see here I need to add semicolon to get rid of the error. So this is a very simple variable. Now, I wanted to highlight one thing, and that is that for public state variables, an automatic getter function is generated. So what does this mean? Well, at the moment, we've got a state variable. And if I deploy this now, which I can do, let's go and select deploy. You'll see down here that I've got no access to any public functions. But if I make this variable, this state variable public, like so, and now I deploy it, take a look at this. When I expand this, I get this blue button called message. This is basically my public getter function. So if I click on this, it will get the value of message, which is, as you can see, welcome. So that is what is meant by, for public state variables, an automatic getter function is generated. So that blue button is made. So let's get rid of this first of all, and let's create our first function using the keyword function, my public get function. And remember, let's check out what we need for our function. We definitely need the visibility. As you can see, the error message says, did you intend to add public? Yes, we did. So let's go public. And then we get no errors. Let's go ahead and say return message. And again, we get the error saying, well, there are a different number of arguments in the return statement than the returns declaration. So we need to tell Solidity that this function is expecting to return something. What is it going to return? Well, it's going to return a string, and in the newer version of 5 and above, we actually need to specify the data location of the variable that we're returning. So here you can see it says it must be memory. So all we do is add the word memory, and there we go. Now we get this warning here saying that we can restrict the mutability to view. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're not modifying any state, just to get rid of the error. So that's all we have to do. We've got a public function on a smart contract. So let's give this a test. Let's go ahead and deploy this. And I'll expand the contract details here. And you can see we've got a myPublicGet function. And if I click on this, it should return the message, which is welcome. Now, remember the difference between a public and an external function? Well, an external function cannot be called internally. So how do we test this? Well, let's go and create an external function. Let's go function, my external get function, like so. And I want to return the message. So let's go return message. And for the visibility, if we look at the error, you can see here, did we intend to add public? Not this time. We want to add external. And let's go just like above, returns string, and then let's go memory, like so. And you can see here we can also restrict the mutability to view as well. So this external function cannot be called internally. How do we test this? Well, let's go and create a function called A that I'm going to call. And this function A is going to be public because we need to give a visibility. And I'm going to call or return my external get function. And of course, we need to provide the returns statement up above. But the error says that undeclared identifier, my external get function, is not visible or not yet visible at this point. So this public function here, trying to access an external function within the same contract, throws an error. So here you can see that you cannot call an external function internally or in the same contract. Now, funnily enough, if you look at the documentation, it says that you can actually use this keyword. So if I go ahead and add this dot, look at that. It actually removes the error. This warning up above talks about the mutability. So let's go view. And all the errors are removed. So it is possible, but quite often you wouldn't use this pattern because this is what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so that was the difference between public and external functions. Let's now take a look at internal functions. Let's go ahead and copy some of the code across into an internal function. And I'm going to, first of all, start off by creating a function called my internal get function. And I want to go ahead and return the message. So I'm just going to get rid of all these errors here that you can see. I'm going to add internal this time instead of public. So let's go internal space. I need a return declaration. So let's go returns string memory, like so. And this warning here is asking for a view. So if we look at the documentation now, the internal function can only be accessed internally from this contract or those derived from it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a small trick, which is the fallback function, where I'm going to try and call this particular function internally. What I'm going to do here is use an event. Let's call this log string, like so. And then in my fallback, I'm going to use what's called an emit, and then I'll go log string, and I'm going to call my internal get function. What this means is that I'm going to execute the fallback function, and this fallback function is going to call the myInternalGet function by emitting an event into the debug log. So this is going to simulate calling the internal function from within the same contract. So let's go ahead and check there are no errors. Let's go and deploy this, clear the logs, and now I can hit transact. Now, because I haven't specified any public function, when I hit the transact button, it's going to execute the fallback function down here. And I should be able to see my internal get function be executed in the debug log files. So let's go ahead and hit transact. You can see the log files down here. Let's go ahead and expand the debug, scroll down, and you can see that in here we've got welcome. So that has executed successfully, as we expected. Let's now go ahead and see if we can access this internal function from a derived contract, or a contract that is inherited from another contract. So to do this, I'm going to create another contract called my second contract, like so. I'm going to take the event log. Let's go down here, take the fallback and place that down here. So I'm just moving things around. And let's take a look at the errors here. You can see that it says undeclared identifier emit log string my internal get function. And that is because the second contract doesn't understand what my internal get function is. So what I need to do is use the is keyword and say that the second contract is a child, or it's derived from, or in other words, it's inherited the properties of the first contract, like so. And that removes all the errors. Now, if I go ahead and deploy the second contract and call the fallback function, it should be able to access the internal contract of the first function. Let's see if this works. So make sure that you go ahead and you select my second contract, because that's what you want to deploy. Hit deploy, and let's expand this down here. Now I want to hit transact, so let me clear the logs first and hit transact, which is going to execute this fallback, which is going to call my internal get function, and then it should jump up to the first contract here. So let's go transact. Let's expand the debug logs, and look at that. I also get welcome down here as well. So we've indeed proved that we can go ahead and access internal functions from child contracts using the is keyword. Finally, let's go ahead and take a look at private contracts. Here you can see that these are only visible for the contract they are defined in, and not in derived contracts. So it's opposite of internal contracts. Let's go ahead and take our internal contract here, and what I'll do is let's change this to my private, and then I'll change the visibility to private, and now you can see that we've got an error saying that we've got an undeclared identifier, which is my internal get function. And that is because private functions cannot be accessed outside of the contract that they are specified in. Hence, we get this error, not being able to see this particular function. So there you have it. We've gone through and I've shown you in code the main differences between the different visibilities of functions: the external, public, internal, and private. Catch you next time.